Now, all we know for certain is that the people in charge have lost it. They really have. And if you don't believe it, listen to them explain the intricacies of the Russia conspiracy. They're mesmerized by it. It's a tale so complex, so riddled with internal contradictions, it sounds like an Eastern religion. Only they really understand it, but they mean it, and they do understand it. To them, Russia is the touchstone, is the comprehensive theory of everything. Consider what happened, for example, last night on cable news. And it really could have been any night on cable news. MSNBC, CNN, take your pick. We just happened to be watching last night around 11 when this happened, so we're bringing it to you tonight because it's interesting and it tells you a lot. By the way, this is from the most serious news program that NBC offers on cable. It's called The 11th Hour. There are two people in the segment we're about to show you. The first is a man called Malcolm Nance. Now, Nance identifies himself as a 35-year veteran of counterintelligence work, whatever that means. His most recent book is called The Plot to Hack America. It was a national bestseller thanks to heavy promotion from MSNBC. The second man you're about to see is Brian Williams, who, of course, needs no introduction. He was the anchor of the NBC Nightly News back when that meant something. Williams is widely regarded as a good guy by people who know him, and he's absolutely, in Washington anyway, is thought of as one of the smartest people in the news business. The point is, these are not kooks on late-night radio. They are considered highly impressive people. Keep that in mind as you watch this. Williams opens the segment by explaining that Russian disinformation teams have been working to divide America and convince the population, among other totally implausible things, that Jim Comey and Robert Mueller might have political agendas. Ridiculous, right? Williams asked Malcolm Nance to comment on that proposition, and Nance says this.
What Russia has done here, and where the true brilliance of this intelligence operation comes from, is way back in the early 2000s, the Russian military conducted a strategic study and started carrying out a disinformation plan in which they said that instead of carrying out kinetic warfare against your enemies, the best thing we can do is create a disinformation frame around that nation, to the point where over time, as we are constantly tearing them apart and feeding them with false information, they would actually welcome an invasion.
Huh? Oh, wait a second here. This is what we in the news business call news. So for nearly 20 years, the Russians have been building a disinformation frame around the United States. What's a disinformation frame? And how does it manage to brainwash an entire population so thoroughly that they welcome a foreign invasion? I mean, that's got to be the most powerful mind control device in human history. More detail, please. This is the part of the interview where the anchor politely interrupts the guest and asks him to explain what the hell he's talking about. But Williams does not do that. He just lets Malcolm Nance keep talking, so Malcolm Nance does keep talking.
So Russia has done that to the United States, and it began way before 2016. As a matter of fact, the earliest references I have in relation to Donald Trump shows that it started back in 2011 with Maria Butina and the NRA contacts with the fundamentalist Christian right and the alt-right in the United States. Russia was pushing these disinformation themes then. Then in 2013, they stood up the Russian Federation Internet Research Agency, which built all of these memes and tropes, which became the cruise missiles of fake news and disinformation designed to do what it did today: take 1/3 of the United States population and make them refuse to believe what they see before their very eyes, and may have elected a president in the process.
Holy smokes. This is a tsunami of news. It turns out that Donald Trump's collusion with Russia began years before any of us suspected, way back in 2011. Here's the confusing part. In 2011, by all outward appearances, Trump was still a pretty conventional New York liberal. He went on David Letterman to read the top 10 list. He endorsed gun control. It was all a cover, a sophisticated ruse. As Malcolm Nance reveals, Trump was in fact busy plotting with the NRA, Christian fundamentalists, and the alt-right. Now keep in mind, this was years before there was such a thing as the alt-right. But that's just how stealthy this operation was. Even the Steele dossier missed it. So did the rest of us, so that's not surprising, since, as Malcolm Nance has explained, thanks to Russian brainwashing, 1/3 of the U.S. population can no longer perceive reality. That's Malcolm Nance's position. What would you do if somebody repeated those exact same words to you on a city bus? You'd likely be worried. At the very least, you'd probably switch seats. Not Brian Williams. He'd move closer. Williams didn't seem to consider Nance's explanation strange in the slightest. He was deeply impressed by it. Williams asked how the Russians could have pulled off an operation this extensive without the willing help of American accomplices. Of course, Nance had an answer to that. Keep in mind, as you watch this clip, that we have not edited the tape in any way. This aired verbatim last night on MSNBC. Watch.
They have played on the themes of far-right conspiracy theorists from the 1960s. The John Birch Society, a sideline group, and the farthest extremes of the libertarian parties. They have amplified racism to the point where the alt-right, Steve Bannon's own creation of gamers, is now the wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump campaign and are believers in David Duke, the Ku Klux Klan, Richard Spencer, the neo-Nazi, and Robert Spencer, the Islamophobe, to the point where they're mainstreamed. This is how effective this information warfare campaign has been carried out. And let me tell you, this report shows how they went after to suppress the African-American vote. And there is no doubt in my mind or anybody else's in the intelligence community that doesn't believe that it took American citizens to assist them in really getting down to where these voters were who needed to be suppressed.
Wow. So in case you weren't transcribing that as you watched, let's bottom line it for you. The Russia conspiracy just expanded to include a bewildering array of new figures. These would include the John Birch Society, the KKK, David Duke, people who play online video games, Steve Bannon, a religion blogger named Robert Spencer, and others. Collectively, their goal was not simply to elect Donald Trump, but to hurt African Americans. Why would Russian intelligence want to do that, you might ask? Well, if you have to ask, you're probably working for Vladimir Putin too, so shut up. It goes without saying that all of this is completely insane. There's no evidence to support